Doc Rivers is heading to the city of brotherly love. Yesterday, former LA Clippers head coach Doc Rivers agreed to a 5-year, multi-year deal to become the Philadelphia 76ers next head coach. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I think my reaction to this is I'm happy for a brother that got another job. He got another job lined up for him, so he ain't got to worry about sitting on the couch for a period of time. I'm very excited for Doc Rivers, and I think this is a big challenge for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he's dealing with two different personalities in the team that wants to win. They want to have championship pedigree in order to compete. And knowing Doc Rivers, he was a point guard playing in the NBA. I think him and Ben Simmons, they go flourish together. They're two introverted people, but Doc Rivers is more expressive. So I think if he can get Ben Simmons' trust and Ben Simmons get Doc Rivers' trust, I think they can grow into a great duo with a player coach together. Because I think those two right there, it can fit together. And one thing Doc Rivers good at, he plays by the rules. He played by his own rules. He feel like wherever he teach basketball, this is the right way how to teach basketball. And he want to bring this to the brotherly love. And he actually want to bring it to a top duo with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And believe it or not, Doc Rivers can know how to build teams up to be playoff contenders. And I think this is going to be something interesting because he's back into the Atlantic. You know, he was a former Boston Celtics coach. He won a title in 2008. He's back to his basic battleground. So I'm very excited to see what he's going to do for Philly. Philly fans should be excited. Even like Joel Embiid already welcomed them, so Ben Simmons should welcome him. I'm very excited for this opportunity for him.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. When you talk about Doc Rivers is one of the most respected coaches we have in the NBA. I know he just lost another 3-1 lead. I think that's the third 3-1 lead he's lost in his coaching career, and which is not good. And we also know he didn't lead the Los Angeles Clippers to a Western Conference Finals appearance as a head coach. And I got my questions about Doc Rivers and some questionable decisions he's made, Clarence, and the adjustments in an NBA playoff series, whether it be against the Rockets a few years ago. You remember against the Rockets, this was the Dwight Howard and James Harden Rockets. You remember this was CP3, Blake Griffin. They were going up against Dwight Howard, James Harden, and that Rockets team, and they lost a 3-1 lead to that Rockets team. Yeah, they lost a 3-1 lead to that Rockets team, and then they just lost a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference semifinals. So I've had my questions about Doc Rivers and some of the decisions he's made as a head coach. But I have no doubts about Doc Rivers as the kind of coach that can demand respect once he takes that clipboard and is now the leading man at the coaching position. Now he'll be the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, and I think Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons will respect Doc Rivers more so than they respected Brett Brown. That was one of the issues that we heard coming out of Philly, was that Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, they didn't respect Brett Brown very much. Even Jimmy Butler, you see Jimmy Butler departed for South Beach, even though it is South Beach. Now, if we're talking about whether or not a player wants to play in South Beach with palm trees, or if you want to play in Philadelphia where it gets pretty cold in the wintertime, the decision is easy for me. I can't blame Jimmy Butler. As a matter of fact, when Jimmy Butler made his decision to go down to Miami, Clarence, and play with the Miami Heat, I was one of the first people to say it's clear that Jimmy Butler isn't going down to Miami to play basketball for basketball reasons. I was wrong about that because he led this Miami Heat team back to the NBA Finals, so he did his part. But what I'm saying is, nevertheless, I believe the Sixers never really respected Brett Brown as a head coach, as a leading man. I think Doc Rivers will command respect immediately from his star players in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. He's going to force Joel Embiid to get his butt down there in the paint. No more shooting all them jumpers. Okay, you too big to be shooting jump shots. Okay, you in the Eastern Conference. You in the Eastern Conference. And last year, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving both were injured. There was no reason why Joel Embiid shouldn't have been a top 3 to 4 player in the Eastern Conference last year. Like he really wasn't. Like last year in the Eastern Conference, it was the Greek Freak. It was Jimmy Butler. It was Jason Tatum. Joel Embiid probably was maybe 4th or 5th, but with his talent, it really you know, she should be like top 2. You know, especially I'm talking about last year, considering Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were out. You see what I'm saying? So like Joel Embiid needs to get his big butt down there in the paint and battle, because he's one of the best big men we have in the NBA. He also, you know, needs to demand that Ben Simmons at least start attempting perimeter shots. You don't have to make all your perimeter shots, Ben Simmons, but you need to at least attempt perimeter shots so the defense can respect the Philadelphia 76ers offense, because they know Ben Simmons has no issues with pulling up from the perimeter and at least being a threat. I think those are the 2 things that Doc Rivers needs to make sure that happens. He needs to make sure that Joel Embiid gets down in that paint and bang with the big boys, and make sure Ben Simmons can develop a consistent jump shot that he actually attempts in games. So I think him being the kind of coach that he has and the cachet that he has, he's going to demand respect ASAP, you know, once he stepped on that court with Simmons and Embiid.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with your statement, what you said. And another thing, too, when Doc Rivers, you know, when he gets there to the brother he loves, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, they can't live off the perception that was given towards them. Like, they have to you know, live up to their expectations as superstars. And believe it or not, I feel like they were supposed to be like a top 5 duo in the NBA, in my opinion, because the simple fact of the play styles that they combine with. And Joel Embiid, he's a good 3-point shooter. I like his 3-point shooter, but I just feel like that he doesn't get set up correctly, and he doesn't really get open looks and good looks at him. I feel like in situations where they need a 3, he try to jam it up because he's trying to be a team player. But I think for Doc Rivers coming down there, it's gonna mash up together, and it's like he's rebuilding a playoff team all over again. But he bringing in his tactics and his tangibles of coaching to this team, and they just get rid of Brett Brown. I think that was the best decision, and now they bring in a proven coach in Doc Rivers. I think this will all pan out together. And believe it or not, they have a nice core of players on their team. Al Horford, Tobias Harris, Josh Richardson.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna get more out of those players. I think he's gonna get more out of those players, design more plays to their comfort, to their strengths, and it's gonna mash all together. They might start dominating next season or a season or 2. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, and last year when I watched the Philadelphia 76ers, one of the issues that I had was when I seen Al Horford and Joel Embiid. They didn't play well together on the floor. You know, the Sixers signed Al Horford in free agency last year, and they brought him in. He didn't play well with Joel Embiid on the floor. I think Doc Rivers will do a better job than Brett Brown did at putting the Sixers players in better positions to be successful. I think it's better when you have Joel Embiid and Al Horford playing separate. You know, I think you should play those guys separate. You shouldn't have them on the floor necessarily together, because I think they kind of both take up, you know, too much space on the floor. I would recommend him doing that. Also, you know, he already previously coached Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris used to play for the Clippers, so he has that, you know, familiarity with Doc Rivers. You know, so that's something else to keep in mind. But when it comes to the Sixers overall as a team, when I look at them in the Eastern Conference next year, now that they have Doc Rivers, I believe when I talk about the top teams in the Eastern Conference, I'm thinking about the Brooklyn Nets. You know, they're going to be bringing back Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, who we're going to talk about here in a minute. You know, they're going to be bringing those 2 guys back. We also going to have the Boston Celtics. Can't forget about them. They were just in the Eastern Conference Finals this year. They still a young team with Jaylen Brown, you know, ascending. You still got Jason Tatum, who was a superstar on the come up. Still got Kemba Walker, you know, one of the best guards we have in the NBA. And then the Miami Heat, who are now in the NBA Finals with Jimmy Butler. Bam Adebayo is going to improve. Tyler Hero is going to get better. So the Miami Heat, they're one of those teams that'll be competing in the Eastern Conference. Then Milwaukee Bucks. Let's not forget about Giannis and Middleton. You know, they'll be back next year as well. Maybe they can add a few pieces. So I think the Sixers deserve to be in that conversation, you know, given the fact that they got so much talent with Embiid and Simmons. And now you add a quality head coach like Doc Rivers. I think the Sixers deserve to be in that conversation with the rest of those teams I just named.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Eastern Conference is coming. Their tough competitiveness is coming back. It's coming back from the early 2000s to the late 2000s. I think it's coming back, and I think it's going to be something great to watch. But let me ask you this real quick, though, before we move on. Do you believe, or can Doc Rivers lead the Philadelphia 76ers to an NBA championship in the future?
Maybe in the future. I mean, they signed him to a 5-year deal. So maybe in the future. Next year, I wouldn't list the Philadelphia 76ers as being the prohibited favorites in the Eastern Conference, finals. I wouldn't see them being that. But they'll be in the conversation. They'll be definitely competing. But next year, I don't see Doc Rivers bringing the Philadelphia 76ers in the city of brotherly love a championship. I just don't see it because I think Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they have a lot to prove. Make no mistake about it. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, they sitting here watching the finals this year with the rest of us, Clarence, seeing what LeBron and Anthony Davis are doing. Okay, Kyrie and Anthony Davis, they want a piece of this action in the NBA Finals. So they got to be reckoned with. Again, the Boston Celtics, they're an ascending team, and they're a young team that will be competing, in the Eastern Conference next season. I think those two teams, and maybe even Miami, I would favor right now over the Philadelphia 76ers. But, I want to see how Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid mesh now that they have Doc Rivers at the helm. I think Doc Rivers is going to demand that these players, hold themselves accountable and they set an example and be leaders of the Philadelphia 76ers moving forward, because that was an issue that we've always had with the Sixers. We know they got talent. We know Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid is one of the most dynamic duos in the NBA. The problem is they don't have the leadership that can help them win an NBA championship. Now they got Doc Rivers, a proven head coach who is going to demand that they, show it in practice and also show it in the game. So I expect the Sixers to definitely compete for a championship next year and for future seasons to come. But I don't think they're going to be winning an NBA championship anytime soon because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is still in that conference, and those are two superstars, at their best.
Believe it or not, I think this is the Philadelphia 76ers first black coach in franchise history. So they got a brother in the office, and they're going to be definitely on our wise guys radar when we keep an eye on the Philadelphia.
Let me ask you one more question on this segment before we move on to our NFL wise picks for week 4. Who has more pressure to win, Doc Rivers or Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons?
I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's Doc Rivers, because I feel like that Brett Brown, he didn't develop Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to the point that they can actually win and make the finals. And I felt like that they regressed in some part of the years, and he wasn't the right coach for them. I think Doc Rivers has the most pressure on him because you just left a caliber team in the Los Angeles Clippers. Now you're transitioning back to the Eastern Conference with the Philadelphia 76ers that hasn't made the NBA Finals since 1983 and hasn't made a Western and the Eastern Conference Finals since 2001, since Allen Iverson. So I think he's facing a lot of expectations in that organization. They expect them to be like the coach that can lead them, that can get them there, that show promise in there. And he, like you said, there's talent in Philadelphia. It's talent in Philadelphia with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, Al Horford, Tobias Harris. He has the talent around it. Now he has to find ways to win. He got to find ways to win. I think the most pressure is on Doc Rivers. Like, you have the talent here. You have to coach them up and win. Now you're in the Eastern Conference. It's more easier in the Western Conference. So you have an opportunity to lead them to a championship. I think it made sense, and it was perfect timing, Trey.
Yeah, but I disagree with you about this. I think it's more pressure on Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. If I remember correctly, Doc Rivers is top 10 in the NBA all time, on as far as wins in coaches. I think he maybe if he's not 10th, he's 11th. He's around that.
11th.
Okay, he's 11th all time on the all-time coaches in wins. So Doc Rivers is a proven head coach. And we remember Doc Rivers won a championship with the Celtics when they had Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Rajon Rondo. He already won a championship with that Boston Celtics team, although that was in 2008. That was in 2008, so that was a while ago. But you remember in 2000, I believe 10, he got that Boston Celtics team back to the NBA Finals, going up against Kobe Bryant and Paul Gasol, and they came up short, but it went 7 games. The Celtics could have easily won Game 7 in Staples Center over Kobe, and we would be talking about Doc Rivers having 2 championships on his coaching resume. I think Doc Rivers, his resume, for the most part, is solidified. Meanwhile, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, they still have a lot more to prove. And I think the reason why I give, Doc Rivers and say that he doesn't have as much to prove as Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid is because we're not even sure if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can play together, Clarence. We're not even sure about that. So because Doc Rivers got a 5-year deal, we're going to find out in these first 2 years, most likely, if Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons can actually play well together and win an NBA championship. Once we find that answer out, we can hold Doc Rivers more accountable because we'll know, okay, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can actually play well together. They can win a championship and compete at a high level. If we find out that they can't, then they're going to break this team up, and Doc Rivers will be part of a rebuild with either Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons as his lone star. You see what I'm saying? I think Doc Rivers gets a pass just because we're still trying to figure out if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can even win a championship as a 1-2 dynamic duo in the NBA. Once we find that out, we'll be able to judge Doc Rivers more. Doc Rivers, he's a proven head coach in this league, but Ben Simmons, is an inconsistent, offensive player. He doesn't even attempt three-point shots. We've always talked about Joel Embiid not being in shape. He needs to get his butt in shape, and I think Doc Rivers will make sure that happens. These are the questions. These are the questions that we've had about the Philadelphia 76ers regarding their two best players, and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. But Doc Rivers is a proven NBA head coach, and he has a great chance to go into the Hall of Fame once his coaching career is over with.